Thank you, Madam Chair. We are live.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting for June 16th, 2021. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge that we are holding this meeting on the traditional territory of the Coast Salish peoples. And with that, I have an approval of the agenda with 5 different changes. So I will let you know what those changes are. R1 is being pulled. R5 is being pulled. They will be on our next Electoral Area Services Committee meeting for July 7th. We have R6 has an added number 3 to the recommendation, and CSR2 has been pulled. I think I have them, Ms. Harrison. Is there anything that I've missed?
Just one more item. CSR1 has a new attachment E.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. Director Martman. I just had a hand up. Director Martman.
Yeah. Is this a place to ask about the pulling of items for explanation?
Well, what if anything's on the agenda that you need to talk about? I guess this would be the place.
Sorry, just to follow up. I meant when items are being pulled as of now, R1 and R5, for example, do you provide an explanation on this at all?
I don't, but there has been errors in the notifications, so that is why they're being pulled. There's been some errors, so they're correcting the errors for the next meeting.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for.
Okay. So with that and those changes, it's been moved. Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. We move on now to the adoption of the minutes. M1, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The recommendation before you is that the minutes of the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of June 2nd, 2021 be adopted.
See a mover? Moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. I believe there is no business arising from the minutes, and we move directly into public input period. Ms. Harrison, do we have anybody waiting to have some public input?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We did have one applicant who wished to speak to item R1, but since it's been pulled, the applicant declined to participate.
Okay, thank you so much. So we move on now to correspondence. We have C1.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item C1 is a grant and aid request for Electoral Area B, and the recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area B, Shonen Lake, in the amount of $1,000 be provided to Shonen Lake Community Association to support a Shonen Lake promotional video.
Moved. Second. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. Now we move on to CR2, Ms. Harrison.
Item C2 is a grant and aid request, Electoral Area B, and the recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area B, Shonen Lake, in the amount of $1,500 be provided to the Rotary Club of Duncan to assist with the community beautification project as outlined in the Think Shonen Design Area Plan for 2021.
And moved. Second. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. Thank you. We move on now to C3, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item C3 is a grant aid request for Electoral Area D, and the recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area D, Cowichan Bay, in the amount of $1,800 be provided to Mill Bay Marine Rescue to provide a monitored alarm system for the new marine rescue location in Cowichan Bay.
That has been moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. Moving on now to C4.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item C4 is a grant and aid request for Electoral Area F, and the recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area F, Cowichan Lake South, Scotts Falls, in the amount of $1,000 be provided to Lake Cowichan Secondary School for 2 bursaries for graduating students that reside in Electoral Area F, Cowichan Lake South, Scotts Falls.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed, if any, motion's carried. C5, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item C5 is a grant and aid request for Electoral Area F. And the recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area F, Cowichan Lake South, Scotts Falls, in the amount of $500 be provided to Vancouver Island Whitewater Paddling Society to assist with determining the feasibility of incorporating recreational play features in the Upper Cowichan River Weir area.
Moved. Second. All in favor? Opposed, if any, motion's carried. Moving on now to information, IN1.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item IN1 contains 2 items. The number 1 is the Electoral Area A, Mill Bay, Malahat, B, Shawnigan Lake, and C, Cobble Hill Joint Advisory Planning Commission meeting minutes of May 27th, 2021. And number 2 is the Electoral Area B, Shawnigan Lake Advisory Planning Commission meeting minutes of May 27th, 2021. And those items are for information.
Thank you. They're for information. And I have Director Acton would like to speak to one. Go ahead, Director Acton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was hoping that maybe this was a appropriate opportunity to have some clarity around my APC minutes. Noted that I was absent, but it's not my understanding that I'm expected to be at an APC meeting unless I'm requested to be there. So perhaps I could have some clarity on whether I'm expected to be at all APC meetings or not. I would like to have that.
So it's a question for staff.
If someone could answer for me, please.
Ms. Cheroff, I believe that it's, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, directors are not expected to be at the Advisory Planning Commission meetings. You're certainly welcome to attend and observe because they are your community's commissions. The minutes could be dealt with at the next meeting of the APC, so there could be a notation or it could simply be removed.
Thank you. Is that,
maybe a notation would be great, just so that the APC realizes, you know, I'm not abandoning them. That's what staff is there for, and I've always been told that it's actually not a good idea to go, so that I'm not influencing the process. But to each his own, I guess.
Yeah. So the next meeting, you could just reiterate that to the APC.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, Director Kuhn.
Well, I think what Sierra is after is that it isn't mentioned in the minutes that the director was absent. I think that's what she's after. And I actually agree with that, because if it's stated in the minutes that the director was absent, then the impression is that she or he should have been there but didn't. So maybe that should be corrected in the minutes that doesn't get mentioned.
Yeah, I think that's what Ms. Cheroff was saying as well. So go ahead, Ms. Cheroff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, so we'll communicate with the minute takers for the advisory planning commissions to let them know that when a director is not present, there need not be any mention of it in the minutes.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. It's a small thing, but it does make a difference. I appreciate that, Director Acton. So we're moving on now. Is everyone okay? We're moving on now to R1, a report from Inspection Enforcement Division.
Madam Chair, item R1 was pulled at the adoption of the minutes.
I'm even getting confused
Agenda,
with my
sorry.
own. Yes. R2.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item R2 is a report from Development Services Division regarding application number ALR 20B01 for 1975 Renfrew Road, PID 028580079. And there is a recommendation.
Thank you so much. And would this be, oh, it's Ms. Wright? Okay, welcome. Welcome, Mr. Limshu, and welcome, Ms. Wright, and go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Wright will give in the presentation, but I'll be running the PowerPoint. So I'm just going to share my screen. Can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Alrighty.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for having me this afternoon. So this is application ALR 20B01. It's 1975 Renfrew Road. Next slide, please. So this is an update to the application that was previously introduced to the EASC a few weeks ago. At that meeting, the area director, the direction from the area director was that the APC consider this application. So this application is for the Shonen Lake School Foundation to exclude a portion of land from the Agricultural Land Commission. So the application was considered at the South Cowichan Joint APC meeting of May 27th, 2021. So at this time, as the application has now been considered by the APC, we are recommending that the application be forwarded to the Agricultural Land Commission for further consideration. And that's just a screen showing in the green hatched where the agricultural land is, or the ALR land is on the parcel. And I am finished my presentation.
Thank you so much. Go ahead, Director Wilson. Can't hear you.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I attended this joint APC and I'm in favor of the recommendation here, but I still have some concerns because it was never really made clear to me as to there were plenty of reasons because there were buildings there and this, that, and the other, but I'm still not clear as to why this is being asked to be taken out of the ALR. I understand that a lot of the land is unproductive and that kind of thing, which is fine, but it never really gelled with me as to why the main reason was. And do we have any clarification on that?
Ms. Wright?
So thank you. Through to the chair. So the applicants also have a rezoning and OCP amendment application with the CVRD. So that is to redesignate the entire parcel to parks and institutional and to rezone the entire parcel to a comprehensive development zone that meets the needs of the specific property. So in this case, because there's ALR land there and because it's been previously built on, I believe the applicants feel that in order to expand any kind of buildings that are already on the land, it can't be within the ALR. So they do have a residence for the students on that land already that was approved by the ALC, I believe, in around 2006. They do have plans to expand that. However, they can't do it if it's still designated, still within the ALR. They also just want it because they basically said that they do not, there's lands that that better suit agricultural uses, and they have agricultural uses on the lot. However, this is not suitable according to the applicants.
Thank you.
Okay, that's great. A very quick follow-up as well, please.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, and yeah, I think I heard you say, Ms. Wright, that they were going to be donating some of this land to parkland, that kind of thing. Is that correct?
No, I don't believe they will be donating any of this land. The CVRD through the rezoning application is discussing possible park dedication with the applicants. However, nothing has been further, no details have really been solidified at this point.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And thank you. I just want to clarify with Ms. Harrison, do we have the applicants online with us?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We do not.
Okay, thank you. I have Directors Morrison and then Director Smith. Director Morrison, go ahead, please.
Thank you. So I'm the question I have for staff is maybe a little bit obscure, but thank you for pointing out the potential agricultural land within the block that's being asked to be removed. But one of the things that we're starting to see is, I know when the ALC was created and they put everything that was potentially productive agricultural land and maybe some other bits in there that that was the full intent. But we know that there have been, for different reasons, there have been land swaps where there's been, decent productive land that has been allowed to be taken out of the ALR and other lands have been put in. And what I'm noting is that because memories are short, that there are now people that are looking at ALR designated lands as, they're not productive, they're not all that great, but they might have been actually part of a land swap initially that reduced agricultural capability in the province. And so do we know when this was included in the agricultural land reserve, and if it is one of those post ALC created land swaps?
Ms. Wright? Sure.
Through to the chair, to Director Morrison. I don't know the exact year. The applicant might know that. However, I do know that this was a previous dairy farm that was actually farmed at some point. And at that point it was put, I think, in the ALR by that farmer who owned it. And then after the Shawnigan Lake School Foundation acquired the land and with the buildings that were already on it. So they acquired a barn and a few other outbuildings. So that's the land that's just remaining from that previous dairy farm. I don't know though if it was put in the ALR at the time that land was designated.
Follow up, Director Morrison.
So thank you. So essentially and the ALC will make the decision, but this, then if this was, a piece that was put in for the protection that the agricultural land reserve provides, then it will ultimately end up in a net loss. It's probably already lost, but a net loss of overall hectares in the ALC, so or in the ALR. So I just wanted clarification on that, and maybe raise the issue with directors that some of those swap lands are coming forward for exclusion from the ALR now. So thank you.
Okay, I do have a little bit of a speakers list. I'm just going to clarify. I have Director Smith, and I wasn't sure if Director Nicholson did put up her hand. No, okay, and so I have Director Salmon. So Director Smith and Director Salmon. Go ahead, Director Smith.
Thank you. Through the chair to staff, can you speak to the rezoning application as this will impact the whole Shawnigan Lake School area, and then we can have a clearer picture of how this fits in? And another question that I have is, the Shawnigan Lake School Foundation does not pay property taxes, or do they pay property taxes only on a couple of areas within their land? Thank you.
Does that Ms. Wright or Mr. Limshoe? Oh, you're muted. Oh, Ms. Cheroff. Sorry. Go ahead, Ms. Cheroff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say that the application that's before you is an application for ALR exclusion. It is not a rezoning application. You do know that the rezoning application is in progress, but staff aren't really prepared to speak to that today. We will be prepared to speak to that application at a future meeting, but I would request respectfully that you not ask questions about the rezoning application at this time, because we're not prepared to speak to that application, and the applicant may not be ready to speak to that application either.
Thank you. And the applicant isn't with us today, but was there one question or two questions, Director Smith? Was there?
Yeah, other question was clarification on the Shawnigan Lake School Foundation and that taxation in regards to their property in Shawnigan Lake, and whether they pay taxation.
I'm not sure. We do have Ms. Weiner here. Go ahead, Ms. Weiner.
Through the chair to Director Smith, as it is a educational property, only a portion of the property is taxable. The other portion that's used for education and that is not taxable, that's exempt.
Thank you. I now turn to Director Salmon.
Yeah, thank you. So just a more of a general question for staff, but on the amenity contribution when that time comes, I'm just aware there's a couple of other private school rezonings in the works as well. And just for consistency, could we or do we have some sort of guidelines on amenity contribution appropriateness for private schools, or is there something that we could
Ms.
send
Cheryl?
along?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the Community Planning Division staff are actually developing or drafting community amenity policy for the committee's consideration. I don't have a date as to when that will be coming forward. I know that there's some work that's being done on that in recognition that we could benefit from a, a consistent policy, but there isn't a consistent policy in place at the current time. We would look to the official community plans that you have for each of your areas.
Follow up, Director Salmon, go ahead.
Yes, Ms. Cheryl, so do you envision that'll be ready by the time these rezonings come up?
Ms. Cheryl?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that would be a better question posed to the community planning staff at the meeting on July the 7th.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have Director Acton. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move the staff recommendation if that, I don't believe
Okay,
that's
Ms.
happened
Harrison,
yet.
could you read the staff recommendation and believe it's been seconded by Director Morrison?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that application number ALR 20B01 for 1975 Renfrew Road, PID 028580079 for the exclusion of land from the Agricultural Land Reserve be forwarded to the Agricultural Land Commission.
Okay, is everybody clear? You'd like to speak to that again, Director Acton? Go ahead.
Thank you. I'd just like to acknowledge everyone's comments and thank you for some of the thoughtful questions that are coming forward. And I agreed, I felt this way as well at first when this came to the committee before going to the APC, that we should see it holistically with the whole rezoning. But I do understand that the rezoning cannot move forward without this process presenting itself. And to remind everyone that all we're doing is giving it to the ALC for them to decide.
Thank you so much. And I turn to the committee. There's no other hands up. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Thank you so much. We move on now to R3, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item R3 is a report from Development Services Division regarding application number DVP 21E02 for 5630 River Bottom Road, PID 004798911, and the applicant is in the lobby.
Thank you so much. And I turn to Mr. Sovdi and Mr. Limshu. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Salvi will be presenting this application. I'm just going to share my screen.
And is the applicant Doug Stevens, Ms. Harrison?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, the applicant is Bradley Fox.
Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, Madam Chair, committee members. My name is Holly Sovdi, planner with Land Use Services. Today I'm presenting a development variance permit application number DVP 21E02, which is seeking to reduce the required streamside protection and enhancement area, which I will call the SPIA during this presentation, setback as part or as set out in section 5.18 of the CVRD Electoral Area E Couch and Station Salem Glenora zoning bylaw. Concurrent to this application, I will note that there is a delegated decision development permit to allow for a new small suite to be built as an additional story above the existing barn within the same footprint. Next slide, please. The subject property is located within Electoral Area E within the Satlam area and is approximately 1.8 hectares in size. The parcel is at the corner of Couch and Lake Road and River Bottom Road, respectively. It is currently zoned suburban residential, which is R2, and is developed with a single-family dwelling, detached garage, and a barn. And I'll just note the barn in the map to the right, shown in orange. It also includes a hand-dug stream and pond, which were built more than 25 years ago, and those are outlined within the southeast portion of the site with the northern edge in blue. The stream and pond is the subject of the riparian area protection regulations, and an assessment was completed in 2020 and attached to this report as Appendix A. The proposed small suite will be built above the existing barn structure and retain the existing footprint. It and the associated retaining wall improvements are shown within the purple hatched area, which I'll zoom into for further detail. Next slide, please. Okay, so the requested variance would seek to reduce the required SPIA setback from the stream, and that setback is shown in the green and purple areas combined, from 20 meters to 17.4 meters from the barn corner and 15.6 meters from the concrete pad edge. The variance also seeks to allow an existing retaining wall to remain and be expanded within the required SPIA setback of 22.5 meters, portion setback from the pond. Based upon the riparian areas protection regulation assessment report that was done last year, the proposed improvements to the barn to add a small suite above and retaining wall, which result in a reduced SPIA setback, will have minimal impact to the SPIA and are supported by the qualified environmental professional due to the fact that the proposed improvements are primarily located within the existing footprints, are entirely outside of the SPIA, and because the appropriate impact mitigation strategy has been prepared, it's included as part of the conditions of approval within the development variance permit. Next slide, please. Notification letters were mailed out to owners and occupants as required pursuant to our CVRD bylaw number 4267. The notification letter described the purpose of the application and how to submit written comments. At this point, we have not received any comments. So staff recommend that the development variance permit to reduce the streamside protection and enhancement area setback for the proposed small suite and retaining wall be approved, subject to the conditions set out in the draft development variance permit, which you can find as attachment D on the report. That's my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Mr. Salty or the applicant? Does the applicant wish to add anything? I see Bradley Fox on here now. Do you wish to add anything?
I don't know that I have much to add. Back when my mother-in-law bought this property, the pond wasn't really there, neither was the creek. It was just simply a wet area that she dug out with a pickaxe, and it grew from there into what it is today. And that was done with the advice of CVRD staffers at the time.
Okay, thank you so much. There might be some questions from the delegation here. I'll just check. I don't see any hands up. Are there any questions for staff? Seeing none. Any questions for the applicant? Seeing none. And then I'm going to ask if someone would like to move the recommendation. Turning to the director of the area. It's been moved and seconded by Director Kuhn. I call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. That will go to the next board. Thank you, Mr. Sovdi. And Mr. Fox. Moving on now to R4.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item R4 is a report from the Development Services Division regarding application number DVP 21F02 for 8631 South Shore Road, PID 025048813. And the applicant, James Oliver, is in the lobby.
Thank you. You can bring him in. And Mr. Lemshu, who will be presenting this?
I will be presenting this application.
Okay,
Just going to share my screen.
go ahead.
Okay, item R4 relates to application number DVP 21FO2. The property is located at 8631 South Shore Road, PID 025048813. The purpose of the report is to present a development variance permit application to reduce the setback requirements along property lines for existing principal and accessory buildings. The subject property is located within Electoral Area F, adjacent to Beaver Lake, and is approximately 4.42 hectares in size. The parcel is accessed from South Shore Road via a private road located in easement plan VIP 72339, and is currently zoned tourist commercial or C4. The site has been developed since 2012 and currently accommodates up to 50 campsites. As outlined in the applicant's rationale letter, which is attached to the staff report, the development of the park has occurred without appropriate permits being obtained and without attention being paid to the siting of the buildings. The current ownership group is currently working with staff, both the planning department and the building department, to address these outstanding issues. Building permit is unable to complete their work with the applicant and deal with building issues until the siting of the buildings in questions have been addressed through the development variance permit. So the requested variance are specific to along the west property line, as you see here. The variance is to relax the setback from 4.5 meters to 2.7 meters. So the plan that you see before you is a recent survey commissioned and prepared by a professional surveyor to clearly identify existing structures and buildings on the property. So with respect to the principal building, we are talking about this structure here. It's basically the office building for the campground. And as indicated, the proposed relaxation is from 4.5 to 2.7. Also along this west property line would be a proposed relaxation of the side yard setback for accessory buildings. So these are sheds that are located within the setback area, and the requested variances from 4.5 meters to 0.8 meters. So as mentioned, these are structures that currently exist. Along the south property line, the applicants are asking for relaxation of the setback from 4.5 meters to 0.7 meters for a number of accessory buildings. So you see these buildings here. As I indicated on the survey, some of these buildings currently actually sit on the adjacent property. The idea is to relocate these buildings back onto the subject site, so that all buildings are currently contained within the subject property. Along the east property line, the relaxation is to address setback encroachments by two existing cabins, 7 and 8. And the relaxation is to reduce the setback from 4.5 meters to 1.4 meters. Last but not least, within the southwest corner, there's an existing shed that accommodates hydro and telecommunications, and the applicants are effectively asking that this particular structure, the setbacks, be reduced from 4.5 meters to 0 meters. This site plan will be incorporated into the development variance permit, and the expectation is that should the development variance permit be approved, moving forward, any future buildings will meet the setback requirements under the existing C4 zone. So with that, I'll stop sharing and answer any questions that committee may have.
Thank you so much. And I'm turning to the committee. Is there any questions for staff? The applicant is James Oliver, I believe. Do you have anything to add?
No, that was
Okay.
pretty clear.
Great. I turn to Director Martman. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Through to staff, it may just be a housekeeping item, but can you confirm the cabin numbers? You were saying cabins 7 and 8, where it appears on the map to be 6 and 7.
That's correct. So it is cabins 7 and 8, and perhaps the applicant can reconfirm that. But effectively, it's the 2 cabins that I had highlighted in the upper right corner, which is the northeast corner of the site.
Yes, cabin 6 and 7 on the plan.
Oh, sorry.
Is that what we're trying to do?
So I believe it's 6-7, not 7-8. Is that what you're trying to clarify, Director Martman?
Right, and if that changes anything.
In terms of the siting of the buildings, it does not, but we'll make sure that the development permit recognizes
the correct numbers of the cabins.
The correct numbers, correct.
Thank you. I turn to the director of the area. I'm not seeing any hands up. Oh, Director Smith, then Director Acton. I do, sorry. Director Smith, go ahead, please, and then Director Acton.
Director Acton was prior to me.
Oh,
thank you.
Sorry. Director Acton, go ahead.
I have a couple questions. Or one is a comment, I guess. You know, a picture says 1,000 words. It would be nice to see some real photos instead of just drawings. But and what did staff? There's a because of the neighborhood. I don't have a good understanding of what these variances might be, if these variances are a big ask or a small ask. Did staff consider sending this to the APC?
No, staff did not refer this to the APC. The surrounding lands are forestry lands, and certainly as per our procedures by law, we did send letters out to the adjacent property owners for comment. To date, we have not received any comments back from any from the adjacent property owner.
Wide sweep.
Follow up, Director Acton?
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead.
I guess I'm just, perhaps it's nothing then, but I always see this as an opportunity of how can we make it better for the community, and so then I'm kind of looking at through that lens, and you know, I guess I'll look for the lead from the director of the area, but yeah, I just think, you know, where's the opportunity to make things better here, and I don't see that. We're just giving out the variance.
Thank you. I turn to Director Smith.
Thank you. I have 2 questions. Cabin number 7, it seems to indicate that and I might be misseeing this, but is cabin 7 within the riparian setback, or is it not? I can't quite tell by the tiny little lines there.
Yeah. So under the C4 zone, the setback requirement is 15 meters from a water course. And according to the survey plan that you have before you, it indicates that those cabins have been located outside of that 15-meter setback area.
Thank you. Is there a follow-up, Director Smith?
Yes. Yeah, it just looks like the corner and the deck are within that area, looking at those maps, but it's tiny to look at.
Sorry, just for clarification. So yeah, with respect to the deck itself is actually further away from the lake. The encroachment of the deck is really into the side yard setback.
Thank you. Is there a follow-up, Director Smith?
And yes, and I was wondering if it looks like there's a lot of sheds that are kind of placed into the setback. And then there's a large section of land that hasn't been developed. Is there a possibility of the owner of the property creating a storage area where these sheds could be put together and moved out of that area to have a look at something like that and create storage areas for each area, each shelter trailer situation?
Mr. Oliver?
That's a good idea. The existing sheds and pretty much all the locations of the building were constructed under the previous director of the ownership group, and we're just trying to make things right. Obviously, there's encroachments that we're fixing and moving things off, and moving the sheds. Some of them are not feasible to be moved, but those that are encroaching are. And I can definitely ask the ownership group if they're interested in building a common shed area. But I don't think under the zone that sheds are not permitted. I think they're an accepted use.
Okay, Director Smith? Okay, I'm turning to the director of the area. Go ahead, please, Director Morrison.
I move the staff recommendation. If there's a second, I'd like to speak to this briefly.
It's been moved and seconded, and I'll get Ms. Harrison to read it out.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that development variance permit number DVP 21F02 for 8631 South Shore Road, PID 025048813 be issued.
Okay, go ahead, Director Morrison. Speak to it.
Thank you, and I thank my colleagues for raising the points and issues that they have raised, and in particular to Director Acton's question about improving. I had the good fortune to go into the property prior to it being developed, and mud was just about up to your knees. It was a former industrial shake mill site that had the potential to become well, pretty much like what it is now, which is a real jewel in the crown of Area F camping locations. So beautiful site. I'm pleased that the current ownership group is taking the steps that they are to correct and bring into line the items that are before us today. And I think, as noted in the staff report, our staff are quite thoroughly engaged with the ownership group to ensure that that not only this, but some building permit and shelters and covers and those sorts of things are being addressed. I think in regards to Director Smith's ask, these are fairly nice and well-established family units that I think that they would appreciate being able to keep things like the pressure washer and maybe a lawnmower or a weed whacker out the back of their property in a shed, so that they wouldn't have to walk a ways to go and get their equipment to come back and do a simple chore around their site. So I don't see much of an issue as long as they're brought into compliance with the setbacks and this variance, that they couldn't continue to be located where they are, and the ones that need to be moved should be moved. And lastly, I'll tip my hat to the ownership group in that they're making best efforts to bring into compliance this, and I think there may be a couple of other issues that they're working with staff, and I'd like to see that this operate as a campground as it has in the past, and provide all the joy that it has for the people that have invested in it, much like our guest on the meeting today. So with that, I'd ask you to support the recommended resolution with me today.
Okay, with that, I look to the committee, seeing no other hands up. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried, and I believe that will go to the June 23rd board. Thank you very much, Mr. Oliver.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Limshu. We're moving on now to R6, and reminding the committee there was a number 3 added on to the recommendation. Go ahead, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item R6 is a report from Development Services Division regarding application number RZ21B01 for 1770 Shawnigan Mill Bay Road, PID 004664531. And there is a three-part recommendation. Would you like me to read that?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
All right. The recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board, number one, that the referrals for the zoning amendment bylaw for application number RZ21B01 for 1770 Shawnigan Mill Bay Road, PID 004664531 be accepted. Number two, that following a public information meeting to be held by the applicant regarding the proposed retail cannabis license, staff report back to the Electoral Area Services Committee with recommendations regarding issuance of the license and proposed zoning bylaw amendments for application number RZ21B01 for 1770 Shawnigan Mill Bay Road, PID 004664531. And number three, that prior to a public hearing for application number RZ21B01 for 1770 Shawnigan Mill Bay Road, PID 004664531, staff arrange a meeting with the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure and the owner of the subject property to discuss the implementation of the Shawnigan Lake Village Plan.
Okay, thank you so much. I go ahead. We're going to have the report by Ms. Wright.
Yes, Ms. Wright will be presenting the report. I'm just going to share my screen for the
Director Acton, you wanted to speak before that, or can you wait for the presentation?
I just thought I would move it since it was just read, but
okay,
it's fine.
I'll come back to you.
Thank you very much. So this is site-specific rezoning to permit a cannabis retail store at 1770 Shawnigan Mill Bay Road. Next slide, please. So the parcel is zoned local commercial C2 and is within the Shawnigan Village containment boundary. It is located on the southeast corner of Shawnigan Mill Bay Road and Shawnigan Lake Road, at the intersection in what the community refers to as the subway building. Next slide, please. So the CVRD has received confirmation from the BC Liquor and Cannabis Licensing Branch, the LCRB, that an application for a non-medical cannabis retail license has been received. And this is the next step in order for the CVRD to possibly consider this application. So this property falls within the Shawnigan Lake Village Plan, or what the community refers to as the Think Shawnigan Plan, which envisions specifically for this property an outdoor patio space in the parking lot, as opposed to the parking, and that the parking be absorbed within the surrounding community area. So that is the newly introduced third recommendation that was just read to you. That further discussion happened between staff, the Ministry of Transportation, and the property owner to further discuss possibly realizing this plan through this application. So what you see before you, and the applicant is here to speak to it as well. What you see before you is the site plan as well as the proposed storefront that is for this building. There are 5 commercial units in this building, as well as 1 residential unit to the rear and a parking lot out front. I believe there's another slide, please. So as per the cannabis retail, policy also applies to the property. As outlined in the report, the parcel does fall within the 300-meter buffer of numerous of the criteria. There is also a residential unit in the building, and parking requirements are not met on the site. We are asking that the application, the next step of the application process happen, and that is for the applicant to hold a public information meeting to gain further insight from the public, and then to report back to the EASC. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I turn to Director Acton has moved the three-part recommendation. Been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Any questions? Go ahead, Director Martman.
Thank you. On the documents that were provided, I was wanting to understand a bit more about the policy around the multiple requirements that were not met. And can you speak to those? Can staff speak to a little bit more? Because there's in the table that was provided, there was a number of not meeting requirements, including parking, setbacks from different locations. So how critical are those from staff's perspective?
Is right. Or Mr. Linshu?
I feel
Sorry, I'll let
to say something.
Okay. So generally speaking, those policies were developed and approved by the regional district board, the CBRD board, and basically it was just to highlight criteria in terms of evaluating each application coming forward. So, as you can appreciate, at the time that non-medical marijuana retail was becoming legalized, a number of communities, including the CBRD, wanted to sort of tiptoe into this forum. And so, that was sort of the main impetus for creating those policies, to make sure that all these issues had been considered when looking at any sort of application for non-medical marijuana or cannabis retail. And so those include setbacks from parks, schools, looking at the surrounding context. And so it gives the community the opportunity to consider all these and determine whether or not it's appropriate to have this particular rezoning move forward. And so I think that's where we are today, because, as this committee is aware, we have considered two previous applications for the same type of use. In one case, it's got similar context in that it's in the village, and certainly the community reaction to that particular application was fairly positive. And it'll vary between communities. I think, at this point in time, it's really about gathering information and making sure that we clearly understand where the community's concerns are and what their general feeling is in regards to the proposed application, and come back, with an appropriate recommendation as to whether or not it makes sense to move forward with bylaws or not.
Thank you. I believe it's Caroline. Is there anything you wish to add?
Hi.
Hi.
I can speak to that a little bit, I guess, in that, I have gone through this process in Ladysmith. When I was first looking at opening the shop in Ladysmith, there was just a restriction, like no retail cannabis was allowed in town. And I actually spoke with staff there as they were trying to determine how to develop bylaws to regulate retail cannabis opening. And, I'd of course been looking at other municipality regulations, and so were staff, of course. And I think I could say all of the municipalities that I looked into had established these these buffer zones that were almost impossible for any location to meet entirely. And that was to allow for the applicant to go through the process, as Frank was saying. And so what Ladysmith ended up doing, and what a lot of these municipalities have ended up doing, is rezoning to allow it in a retail area. Consider the places where retail typically happens, and still make it go through some kind of public hearing to make sure the town is on board. But yeah, the buffers in the end were typically abandoned for kind of a blanket, okay, we'll allow it in this retail area pending public consultation.
Thank you. I'm seeing Director Martman, and did I miss anybody else? Okay, Director Martman, go ahead, please.
Oh, thank you. It's just really a follow-up, and I appreciate the comments by I think it's Carolyn. And but the one thing that strikes me in this application is about having a residence in a retail area, and I was interested on staff's, I guess because it's part of the policy. Could they speak to that specifically?
Certainly, with each application, we will, the context surrounding each application is slightly different. And so at the end of the day, once we go through this process, I think the future staff report will speak to that particular issue to see whether or not it actually makes sense, or whether there's a concern with respect to having residential over retail. I mean, generally speaking, it's commonplace to have mixed use buildings where you generally encourage residential above retail in a number of communities. The difference here is in the type of retail that's being proposed. If we were talking about a convenience store, a grocery store, or a consignment store, having retail over it, it'd be a non-discussion because it's generally accepted. Again, I think the policy was put in place to, again, give the community the opportunity to just kind of have a sober second thought to make sure that prior to adopting or amending the bylaw, that they take all these factors into consideration and whether or not it actually makes sense at the end of the day.
Carolyn, you'd like to add some more? Go ahead, please.
I thought I could share, the store that I have in Ladysmith also has a residential unit upstairs. And very similarly to the Shonen location, the residence access is in the rear of the building, whereas our access is in the front. So they really are, while they're physically in the same building, we don't ever cross paths or see the residents upstairs. I think it's important to note that there is no odor. This isn't a consumption lounge. Everything is packaged and sealed. And security is at the very top of the list as far as compliance goes on my end. So, I just wanted to mention that we do have that situation in our other existing store and that it has been a non-issue.
Thank you. Turning to Director Morrison, and I believe it's been moved and seconded, or just moved. Go ahead, Director Morrison, then I'll turn to Director Acton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I, just having been here for a bit in the advent of, first medical growing and legal consumption for medical purposes and all the different permutations that we've gone through. My perspective on this is when we saw this, when the federal government, telegraphed that this was coming down the pipe, so to speak, the staff put as many filters into the mix that would give us as an elected body the opportunity to, basically consider each of these items as an independent standalone, given we sort of threw everything, including the kitchen sink, at them as regulations that they would have to make and meet. And now it's coming back to us saying, okay, well, that preliminary list of requirements is obviously almost impossible to meet, but what are the requirements that a community or an area would have if they were to accept a retail operation? So this is, to me, it's a logical product of what our professional staff have given to us in an uncertain time, that's giving us the opportunity to not only consider it and to go back to the community and have the community consider it within a basket of policies that are in place. So this makes perfect sense. I have no concerns about moving this forward to the next step and those inquiries and discussions happening before it comes back to us for further consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Acton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It sounds like this is wrapping up here, so I just wanted to thank the applicant for her patience. This is something new for us, I think, as people have kind of explained. And and I thank staff for the attention to Think Shonen, because it really is an issue. on that corner of no parking, and it's actually extremely unsafe. And I've stood there with MOTI and witnessed a lot of infractions and really unsafe actions as we move along. So I think there's always a way to move forward, and I look forward to, you know, those conversations happening and all of us being able to make our little village just a little bit better. So thank you.
Thank you so much. So that's been moved, and I'm just double checking. Has it been seconded?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, it has.
Okay, so I'm going to call the question. I see no other hands up. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Thank you very much, Caroline, and thank you again, Mr. Limshu. And we move on to, I see it's 2:30. We take a 10-minute break and come back to the last one in our close. So we will come back at 2:40. So it's a break until 2:40.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
there's only one item left in the regular session for information, and then question period would be the logical.
Okay, thank you. I just wondered if R7 was going to take a while. That's why okay, let's go to R7. Thank you, Ms. Harrison. And then when it comes to the question period is when we'll take a break. Go ahead. Welcome, Mr. Hatami.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Thank you. Just briefly,
Point of order.
Sorry, Mr. Director Martman.
I think we may have lost the director.
Oh, right, because I said it. No, she's here. That's good.
I'm here. I had to kill an ant.
Oh, there you go.
I didn't say that.
Go ahead, Mr. Hatami.
Okay, thank you. So as I was saying, this report provides an update on the curbside contamination rate and on our public education program as it relates to the recycling, and also on the notices that we have been sending to the residents regarding the contamination in their recycling bins. This report is for information, and I have the staff, Amanda Klechko, who is our environmental technologist, and also Doug Stevens, who is our solid waste superintendent, with me to answer questions.
Thank you so much, and welcome, Amanda, and welcome, is it Doug?
That's right.
Oh, there it is, Mr. Stevens. Okay. Are there any questions for staff? Go ahead, Director Morrison, and then Director Martman.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. So, you know, this is really troubling in my mind, in that we aren't going in the right direction, and you know, so far the parent organization responsible for this program hasn't come down heavy, but I think they're getting serious. I don't know if any of you have ever been to the reception building at Bings Creek when they're bringing your electoral area recycling in or not, but it's pretty shocking. There are an awful lot of folks out there that use their recycling bin as a catch-all for anything and everything. And so, you know, having a little bit of background in what has been done as far as programs and initiatives, use of summer students and the like in the past, you know, a face-to-face seems to work, but those are boots on the ground that we are going to have to decide, I think, as a group, if we want to pay for, because you know, I've got warning stickers and thought, oh my gosh, how did that get in there? And you know, we're all human, but it seems like we've had some success with having people on the ground talking to people on their curbside collection day. So I'm just wondering if staff are considering, just as an example, this is a bit of a side issue, but I've had a resident come to me and say they would be perfectly happy if once a month or you know, once every 6 or 8 weeks, a person in a CVRD uniform with a vest came around and talked to them about what was going into their recycling and what wasn't. And you know, the cost of having a personnel doing that may actually end up being cheaper than the fines that we as an organization may be experiencing if we don't get this under control. So I'd like to throw that out there for staff and ask, you know, have you got better ideas than stickers and letters and fines at this point? Do we have a more proactive way to ensure that we can reduce the amount of contamination going into our curbside and recycling? Thank you.
Who would like to take that on? Go ahead, Mr. Hatami.
Well, we had already launched a campaign, and exactly as Director Morrison mentioned, and it was actually up and down. We have been educating the public to an extent, from 18% contamination rate, we went down to 13, and we are back again to 18. But we keep doing that, I can ask Amanda to actually walk you through more detail, what kind of campaign and what kind of education program we have. And Amanda, on a continuously, she attends, goes to societies, associations, and groups, and community groups, providing them with education. But again, it's kind of shocking after all of that. It doesn't seem that is working, and maybe we have to move, to a different, kind of approach, which we started by sending these notices. So notice number 1, notice number 2, and then 3, and then the bylaw officer will visit them. And at the same time, we are using the technology. So we have actually, all of the totes actually have this microchip, and our trucks actually equipped with a camera, so we can see what goes actually in those bins. And since we started sending those notices, and when I was stationed up to a couple of days ago at Bings Creek, a large number of actually public came over with questions, because there are pictures taken by the camera and shows what was actually in those bins. And that was another opportunity for us to educate them further. But Amanda, if you have anything to add to that, please do so.
Sure. I can let you know that we have done some presentations. Last few weeks ago, I finished a presentation for the Rotary Club, where I provided lots of information about the contamination and the rates that we're facing. In the past, we have attended public events where a great deal of information has been shared, and so the current curbside program was launched in 2014, and since then we have identified certain addresses or repeat offenders that we have actually gone back and audited their totes. So we have taken strides to identify who our biggest challenges are and speak to them directly. So a couple of years ago, staff were out and they reached probably, I think, 50% of staff, residents doing tote audits alone. And last year, like the report suggests, we reached about 2/3 of the residents with the decals. During the decaling campaign, we spoke in depth with anybody who approached us as we were at their curb. And we do also have the Recollect app, which we are trying to promote quite heavily. It's on all of our documents. It's all over the website, and the Recollect app allows people to type in the material that they're looking to dispose of, and it lets them know exactly what to do with it. I do feel like there has been quite a lot of resources available to people at this point.
Thank you. A follow-up, Director Morrison. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'll be brief, and yeah, we all know that there's chronic offenders, and I've got them in my community, and it's really annoying. But one of the things that I bring up as an issue, and that there's been a lot of training, and directors that have been here for a while have participated and tried to get the message out, but we're having a lot of resident turnover with the recent sales of properties and the likes, and I think there's some people that we're going to have to start start fresh, start brand new with, because what may have gone into a blue bin in Victoria or Nanaimo or other places may not be the same as what we're accepting curbside. So I just bring that to your attention, and thank you, and turn it over to the next folks.
Thank you. I also had noticed that Area D was one of the culprits, and I just finished writing a report in South Cowichan News that goes into everybody's mailboxes, just a reminder as well. It's constant, and I think that's a good point from Director Morrison, that we have a lot of new people in our community for sure. And I turn now to my speakers list, and I turn to Director Martman, and then I have Acton, Smith, and Salmon. Go ahead, Director Martman.
Thank you, Chair, and through to staff. I guess first of all, thank you for the report, and I do have some questions I may follow up about Area H specifically. I don't want to take the time up there now for that. I am interested though about what Director Morrison had to say about the use of bylaw officers, and is this the best use that we can do? Do we have, or do you have the ability to refuse service, to refuse collection? Is that an option? And as well, there must be many models out there of escalating, I guess, the penalties. And do you see this as the best model, or do you have other models that you might have considered as well?
Not sure who would like to take that. Go ahead, Amanda. You're on mute.
The drivers can refuse totes. However, they don't always know what's in the tote when they come up to it. So quite often it's not until the material has been tipped that they see what's there, and it's at that point it's too late. We can't take the material out, and that's when it gets tagged as contaminated. And I didn't quite catch your second question.
Director Martman, could you repeat that?
Right, and I think that, yeah, maybe I'll repeat the first question as well. The first question was really about refusal, not at point of loading, but at a point in the future where if you notice this is a contaminated tote, that you will not pick up from this person, and they will incur a penalty because they won't have the service. And then whether this is part of a model of other places or other jurisdictions that have had to deal with this and have come around with successful models, whether it's escalating penalties, whether it's rewarding people that are doing the right thing. I'm just curious if you've investigated those, and is this the best model that you see going forward?
Go ahead, Amanda.
We have discussed that because of the steps that have been taken in the past, we felt that this was the next step that needed to happen. We do know that the contamination of totes is an issue in other areas, and there seem to be quite a few areas that are struggling with this problem with Recycle BC. That's about all the information I have. If Hamid has more, Doug?
Sure. Actually, this is a good question, because other jurisdictions are suffering from the same issue, and everybody is struggling with that. But we have, more like an automation in our collection system. So that's why the driver cannot see what is going to be tipped into the truck. However, after the fact, when the camera takes actually a picture, then there's a automated system, we generate a notice. So that notice that goes to the resident, and now with a whole bunch of, educational kind of information. And then, the second time goes there, and the third time goes there. So 3 times before actually we send the bylaw officer. And we pay actually, as part of the solid waste, about 50% of a bylaw officer's kind of salary. And that was for a number of other issues that we had to enforce that. So basically, at this point, there are 3 stages. And we started with stage 1 and stage 2. And the first time, actually, when we started on a weekly basis, we issued over 700 letters. Amanda, if I'm wrong, we send it out. So then, yes, sometimes, the resident made a mistake, you are with them, you explain it to them. And then, the second time happened. Again, we do that. The third time, then after that, you have to take an action. So that's the approach. And we hope, again, by the end of, the second round of notices, we see actually a decrease in terms of contamination rates. So if we manage to do that, then we don't need to go to phase or stage 3 or 4. So it works. That means, we have done it. And again, some of the new residents that move into that area, and then the moment that they come to the Beans Creek to pick up actually their totes, that's another opportunity for us to walk them through this process and educate them. Yeah, it's a lengthy process. It's a little bit painful, but we have been patient, as much as we could, but.
Thank you. Do you have a follow-up, Director Martman? Are you okay? Okay, I turn to Director Acton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With my marketing, professional marketing background, I always struggle with these conversations because we miss so many opportunities. In Shonen alone, we have 3 groups that are taking care of litter. They're interested in recycling. So we're not utilizing these community groups enough. That's one. And we don't have that information at our fingertips and where we can just send it out to them. So, and then another one is people don't operate well with negative feedback. And I feel like if we could perhaps, instead of spend money on staff time or bylaw enforcing these types of things, we spent a larger amount of money on an advertising firm or where they got really creative, and maybe we partner with the RDN where they're also challenged with this type of activity, and we create a contest against them, who's going to do better, and then we educate the schools. I know that both my children's schools have been really involved with litter cleanup, and the kids go home and talk to the parents, and we have a liaison that does it that way. Like it's a really, or we have a mascot. Like there's just so many ways that we could really make it fun, and people put the pressure on their neighbors. They pay attention. When you start getting lectured or you finger wagged at you, you instantly are defensive and you stop listening. And I just, I think we could really take it as an opportunity to reach out to our communities and our groups and use those resources better. So anyway, when you need a marketing specialist, I'll help you out with that.
Go ahead, Mr. Hatami.
I just want to add a comment, and I agree with Director Acton. Yes, there is a possibility, all of the above. I agree 100%. But the dilemma that we are facing that is a penalty. And if we continue like that, we have to pay, I believe, is about $5,000 per ton. That would be a huge and significant amount that Recycle BC is going to charge us. So that's another side of the equation that we have to balance,
Follow up, Director Acton, go ahead, please.
Absolutely, and maybe that's part of the education that we let people know. These are the penalties that we're going to incur, because I remember being once at the Eco Village, and on every garbage can, they had a little sticker that said, this garbage that you're putting in here is going to travel, I don't know, forget what it was, 150 kilometers or something, wherever we were shipping our garbage to. So it was really powerful to show, what happens with your actions. And so how do we get that message out?
Director Smith?
I think I saw Mr. Stevens' hand up for a minute there.
Go ahead,
Did he
Mr.
have
Stevens.
a comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just want to respond a little bit further with what Mr. Hatami said. We've been in touch with Recycle BC. We've been formally requested to put a plan together within the next 6 weeks. I think we've got about 3 weeks left at this point to complete that plan. They're going to be continuing to audit our material over the next year and we have a limited time frame to correct the contamination issues. By all means, we're very interested in hearing what all of our area directors' input on how we can improve the program, but we do have a limited time to correct the program, and we're using some information off of best use practices that have been used around the province of British Columbia. So they've had quite a bit of success around the province correcting these programs, and these are some of the protocols that we're following. And they do include, additional information with notices of contamination and further contamination letters followed up by law officers. So like I say, they've had good success with that. And again, we do have a limited time. And the fines that could come from Recycle BC are per occurrence. So every time that our material is audited, if we are not improving our contamination, there will be a fine per occurrence. And we do audits up to around 20 audits per month of our materials coming into the facility. So it could become very expensive very quickly. And further to add to that, if we don't improve our contamination within a set amount of time, we could essentially lose the program entirely, which would mean it would be taken out of our hands, and Recycles BC would take that over and reissue that to a new contractor.
It's interesting. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Smith.
Well, that's scary. I think that as a star recycler myself, along with all the rest of the directors that are sitting here, I'm sure that we all take a peek in some of the bins as we happen to accidentally walk by. That we might notice as that there is some contamination. So we know that it is happening in our communities because we see it in the bins that are out there. And I'm just wondering if I have a couple of questions. One is, what is the amount that we have collected in fines over the last year?
Do we have that information, Mr. Hatami? Go ahead.
We haven't started that program yet. This is actually the next step, or next two steps. So we try our best to educate the public as much as we can by sending these notices. It's not just only a notice as a letter, it's also an information package. We send them the brochure, we send them all of the information. And again, we keep our fingers crossed, if it works. But I mean, time is ticking, and the end, we have to actually send the bylaw officer with that notice. And again, the fine is about, I believe, $100. Amanda, that's. Yeah. But still, is not a long way, but it's a way to get there.
Follow up, Director Smith. Go ahead, please.
So we hear that we do have a fair bit of residential turnover happening in our communities, and people are coming from other areas. I remember at some point talking to the communications department that was working on a welcome package for each new either property owner or resident that was to be sent out as properties change. And the inclusion of the recycle information would be beneficial, I believe. And I'm not sure where we are at with that program. It seems like almost a couple of years ago that was starting to move forward, and I'm not sure if there's anyone of staff at this time that could speak to that.
I'm looking around my screen and I can't see any staff. Mr. Hatami, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, that's true. No, there was a program and we were supposed to do that, but no, with the start of this COVID, so everything was put actually on hold, but definitely that was actually the idea, to provide information not only on solid waste but overly on CVRD services to whomever moves to the area. But I can follow up, with a communication person and see where are we.
Okay, follow up, Director Smith, go ahead.
Thank you. I would appreciate the follow-up because I do think that we, in our development permit areas, we are having issues with some of the newer residents not understanding that there's actually regulations in electoral areas, and that and this would really help, I think, with the contamination for recycle. So if that's a possible, I really would appreciate either, a report back, and then we would know where we're at with something like that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I turn to Director Salmon and then Directors Wilson. Go ahead, Director Salmon.
Yeah, thank you. So I think we know repetition is key to effective communication. So Chair, you did mention your article in the South Cowichan Life that I just recommended to everyone. It's fun. I think the term you used was wish cycling. Is that right?
Mm. Yeah,
So
that came from our staff at CVRD too. Yeah, it's a really good. Yeah, you got to make it so that it's, we turn a little, light-hearted, and yeah.
Went out to everybody in area A, B, C, and D. So
Mm-hmm. It was good timing and a reminder. It's a constant reminder. I've also, as an area director, well, with COVID, I had not, but I've actually had meetings just on garbage and recycling. So I've had many of them too, and they were valuable too. And then our recycling, it has different things change all the time, but I've tried as a director. So I was really surprised when I saw Area D, but anyway, okay. Moving on now to Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to take issue with what was said about more consultants, bringing a consultant. I've lost track of the number of times I've heard that we've got expert staff and they know what they're doing, and they're doing their best at right now to do exactly what we pay them to do. Given the choice between bringing in another consultant and talking to him about it and giving the money to the staff to get on and do what they're trying to do, I know which one I'm going to go to.
Okay, thank you. So this was for information. And I think once COVID, once we can have our directors meetings and those types of things again, but I encourage people, like I've done in South Cowichan Life, anywhere where you can put a word in about our recycling and what we are doing and educating the public. For us, it's very valuable, and for them, it will save their tax dollars too. So thank you very much. And we move on now to we move on now to question period. So we'll be closing and we'll come back at 3:10. Thank you very much. Nice meeting you, Amanda and Steve. I mean, not Steve, Doug. And could you also read what the motion to go into close under? I don't have it in front of me.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are live.
Okay, thank you very much. We have no questions for question period. So we will now go into close. So moved and seconded. Ms. Harrison, could you read our closed?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The motion before you is that the meeting be closed to the public in accordance with Community Charter Part 4, Division 3, Section 90, subsections as noted in accordance with each agenda item.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. See you in a bit. We leave this one and go into our closed. Thank you.